All right. All right. Welcome. Welcome, one and all. This is the fourth ever, I believe, uh, Game Roulette Awards show. And let's see, hold on. I'm still, for whatever reason, I am still using Price is Right music to introduce these shows. I don't know why that's been the tradition, because at no point has this been a game show. It's always been a very dignified and very serious awards show to kind of honor some of my favorite games that I've discovered through the game roulette in the past 6 months or so. I'm still kind of trying to like nail down the proper formal outfit for this situation. But anyway, in that vein of like nailing down the outfit and this being a very serious and very formal occasion, we have had the running joke since the very first Game Roulette Awards show that I would do the thing where I'm like, oh, I need to just not wear like the hat that I wear in like every single stream that I do, and instead put on something a little more befitting of the occasion. And so then I'll go and break out something. So like, oh, oof. All right. So obviously, something like this would be much more fitting for a formal awards show occasion. So I think this is better formal attire, and I am going to be running very short on wacky hats to wear for these awards shows. That's going to be happening very soon. Anyway, here I am, standing at the podium. I'm definitely not sitting down in a chair right now. um, and I just noticed that like the weird like Genesis sound fonted Price is Right theme that I had a list of like Patreon supporters at the end, and I'm not sure why that is. Maybe somebody just like made that remix with the Genesis sound font, and maybe it's not from an actual Genesis game. That's very possible. Anyway, let's see. Oh, I've got the audience here, so they are ready to applaud all of the games that we're about to honor here. Yeah, yeah, there they are. They are ready to show their love and appreciation for all of the games we're about to discuss here. Man, I was briefly looking over the last Game Roulette Awards show, which I'm pretty sure I neglected to ever upload to my stream archive. And there were so many things that I was like, oh, I need to do this for next time. I need to like improve this thing for next time. And I've made like none of those changes. I have not stopped using the Price is Right uh, theme music. um, what else? Oh, I said I wanted to write the names, like I wanted to have the names of each game printed on the clips that I gathered, and I didn't do that. Um, I'm not sure what else. There's a lot of other stuff that I wanted to improve upon, and then I just totally did not do any of that stuff. So, let's see. If you've not watched a game roulette before, the premise of those is that I periodically do these streams where I spin a wheel to play PC games that are in my backlog that I received from giveaways or bundle purchases or super cheap sales. And I will usually try them out for about 45 minutes. And if you've never seen the Game Roulette Awards show, the basic premise of this is that I want to take some time and honor the games that are just some of the very best ones that I've played throughout those streams. Um, my real plan here is to like discuss every game that I played in the last 6 months or so of game roulettes. I think I maybe stopped keeping track in like May or so, and it'll be like 6 months of game roulettes before that point. Anyway, I want to discuss all of them, kind of talk about my overall feelings for them now that I've had some time to reflect on them, talk about kind of what I liked and didn't like about all of them, and then obviously just the very best ones will be getting actual awards. So let's see. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start just going through each of the award categories. The final award that I intend to get out is the highest recommendation, basically a game that I full on think you should buy just because it was such a great overall experience. You know, that would be like your best picture equivalent or something like that if this were a movie awards show. So, let's see. I think I still have... Oh, that's a new chatter. I'm not going to be playing any of the games tonight. I'm not going to do like an actual game roulette award. Sorry, I'm not going to do an actual game roulette. This is just going to be the awards show to talk about some of the best ones. So let me see. I think I've still got like some assets left over from the last time I did one of these awards shows. And so let's see if I can pull that up on top. Yeah, so that's going to be for the end where I'm going to talk about the least remarkable ones. So let's see. What I'm going to talk about right now is my first category on the list, Best Single Sitting Game. This is what I usually start out with. This category is for the ones that either I finished within the 45-minute time limit on stream or, you know, close enough to it, or games that somebody could potentially complete in that time. Have I played Fortnite? Very briefly, several years ago. I guess, you know, it's alright. I'm just not that big of a Battle Royale player. Anyway, let's see. So the way I usually structure the awards is I will basically list off all of the runner-ups, and really every runner-up in every category really is a winner. It wouldn't be in the category if I didn't think it deserved some kind of honorable mention. So the final one that I list off will be the one that I think most deserves this award. So let's add one in here. Let's see. I'm trying to remember how I do this in OBS because it's been so long. Okay, single sitting games. Let me navigate to my folder where I have all the clips. Bear with me a moment. All right. So one of these, and this one honestly was like, oh no, hold on. Let me do this one first. This was, let's see. Oh yeah, here we go. This was the first one. This was Un Pas Fragile. This is exactly why I thought that I needed to like start including the actual names of the game clips, or include the actual names of the games in these clips, because this one has like a French title that I cannot read properly, and this one was, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. I mean, obviously it's about a little frog doing ballet, and had just like, I don't know, sort of a point and click adventure game style to it, where you would just go from screen to screen and get kind of like prompted to do these various interactions. You don't really have like a whole lot of choices to make throughout the game, and uh, the few choices that you would get would lead to like a couple different endings. So I think I did like at least 2 full playthroughs of it. Yeah, this was like one of the choices you get throughout the game, where it's like you choose who to sit next to on the bus. Anyway, that one was very short. I think this only took about 10 minutes to play to completion, and it was a pretty good one. I like the like hand drawn art style to it. There's a lot to like in that one. So, oh yeah, let's give it up for our first game here, the first of one of our best single sitting games. All right, cool. And then let's see the next one in this category. Let me find it here. Yes. So this one, I gotta make sure I'm setting all of these to loop also. This one was called Islands, non-places. And this is another one that's like honestly kind of hard to describe, but it would show you these just kind of, surreal landscapes that look sort of like places in the real modern world. But had sort of like a vague fantastical quality to them. And it was sort of like a light puzzle game. You just sort of like rotated the scene around and found various things to click on until eventually it just sort of completes, I guess, and it would move on to another scene. Very much like the main reason to play a game like this was for the visuals, which it really nails. It really has that on point. It's very atmospheric and, once again, very short. Now that I actually like sit and look at this one, I don't remember if I actually completed the entire game. I don't remember. I think I did, but man, yeah, it's been like kind of a long enough time period in the course of the last 6 months of Game Roulette that I'm kind of forgetting some of the details about some of the games. But this one was cool, just for like the surreal visuals alone. That made it a very good single sitting game. So let's give that one some applause while I look for the next game. Yep, let's hear it for Islands, Non-Places. That one is pretty great. All right, now the next game. This one was almost the winner of this category. It was a very close decision, in fact. This one, it was also one that I did more recently, and it was called Adios. And honestly, like, this is not usually the type of game that I go in for, and especially not the type of game that I usually go in for in a Game Roulette setting, because it's like very slow-paced, very story-driven, very story-heavy. It's about like very serious story topics. It has a lot to do with like, death and like the main character's family sort of falling apart. And I think, hold on. Oh God, what just happened? So I think my external hard drive where I had all the video clips on it just briefly disconnected. Hold up. For a second I thought the whole stream crashed. Hold on. Okay, I can still get them back on here. Looks like we are still online. We're still in it. Anyway, Adios is back. And okay, I've still got my list of nominees and awards up. But anyway, yeah, even with me trying to kind of like, I guess, find the fun in this game, some of the story still hooked me. It was still really great. I would recommend somebody buy this game, except, I mean, it is just very short. I was able to finish it in like, oh, maybe an hour. There's not a lot of like replay value to it. Maybe just a few different dialogue options you could choose, but nothing that would make that big of an impact. The biggest point of praise that I had for it, even while I was playing it, was like the voice acting was actually very good in this one. Like, really much better than you tend to see in the average video game, let alone the average indie video game. But, like, actually really great in that department. And that makes the story all the more enjoyable. So let's hear it for Adios. Alright, alright. And now it's time to find the winner in this category. Those are the 3 nominees, and like I said, all of the nominees are winners. But the one that I chose as the winner of this category was The Corridor. Let's hear it for The Corridor. What a great game. Wow, isn't it wonderful? All right, oh, hold on. Yeah, there it goes, yeah. And this was like, you know, a very meta game. It was basically like you're in a small corridor, you go to the end of the corridor and you push a button, and generally like pressing the button meant closing the game. I think that's why it's going to like a blank screen here. And it did a lot with that concept. It was very much like the game versus the player, where it has this omniscient narrator who is trying his best to stop you from pushing the button. And it just did a lot of like fun creative twists on that idea as it went on. And once again, this is another one that you would probably only play once, because not a lot will change in repeat playthroughs. And I don't even know actually how you get this game. I'm pretty sure I've got it because I subscribed to like 1 month of the Humble Bundle monthly service, and this was included in their like trove of games that were free to keep. So yeah, I mean, it's a very short thing. It borders on like being a tech demo, but it was still really fun. If you're into those meta type games like the Stanley Parable or something like the Beginner's Guide, then this is a great one to add to that collection. Let's give it up for The Corridor, and for all of the nominees here, in fact. Aren't they all great? Yeah, wow. What a great bunch of games. Alright, so it's time to get them off the screen. And to move on to the next category. This one's going to get a little odd. It's definitely going to be a little different from past award shows. So let me edit the text here. This one is called Played Further After the Stream. And it's pretty self-explanatory. Basically, this is where I just shout out games that were compelling enough that I played them beyond the 45-minute time limit that I imposed in the game Roulette, and decided to give them a little more of my time. This is another one where, like, I'm not really going to pick out a best game for this category. I'm just going to kind of list them all off. But like I said, this is an odd one because there's only one game from the last batch of game roulettes that falls into this category. And there's going to be one retroactive award, a game that I picked back up from like the past batches of game roulettes. So let's see. Let me find the first one here. All right, so the first one that actually is from this batch was Nightmare Tower. This is like something that harkens back to the days of like classic Flash games, where it's like a pretty simple arcade-y game mechanic, and you just sort of buy incremental upgrades to make you do a little better in that simple like main game. I immediately enjoyed this one. I found out that it was made by the same developers that made an actual old Flash game in that category called Burrito Bison. I'm pretty sure it was. So this one, I actually went and played it more pretty short time after the stream where I tried it out, and I eventually played it to completion. It's a pretty short game, you can just easily beat it in an afternoon, maybe just in like a couple of hours, basically. And that one was really good. Would highly recommend that one to anybody if you're into that type of game. Yeah, Nightmare Tower. It's a good one. Alright, now I have to like delve back into a past folder to find my next one. But okay, this is an unprecedented thing, but this is a retroactive award being issued. I played more of Ex Anima after first trying it on a game Roulette. I really enjoyed this one like quite a bit. It's, a sort of isometric dungeon crawler, but very physics heavy, and like physics heavy in a lot of unexpected ways. So you have to like really get the hang of like swinging your character's arms to use a weapon and trying not to just trip and stumble over everything. A way that I like to describe this game is like Dark Souls had the Curse of the Undead, and Ex Anima has the curse of everyone is completely blackout drunk at all times. Because that's very much how your character is going to control, and it's how like all of the NPCs are going to act. So I played some more of this one, just because it's like really fun and goofy, but it's also got like a really cool procedural weapon generation system, which is really neat. So that one is definitely worth checking out if it sounds intriguing to you. Let's hear it for Ex Anima, receiving a retroactive award. A Game Roulette Awards show first. And these are the only two. It's really surprising, because I feel like I've played a lot of great games in recent Game Roulettes, but I don't know, just not a lot of them have really compelled me to keep on playing. I'm sure part of that is like, the new Zelda game came out this year, and I was very occupied with that. So it kind of cut into a lot of my otherwise just general game time. But yeah, okay, that's enough applause for those. It's only 2 games. Let's get real here. And let's move on to another category. Let's see. Alright. Here's a good one coming up. Most pleasant surprise. This category is for games that I thought I wouldn't really enjoy at all, or games that I thought were not going to be my speed, and ended up, like, inexplicably just sucking me right in. Games that I ended up just really loving. So, let's get the first one out here. First one in this category, it was... Man, I really need to remember to like print the names on them for next time. This was called a Vagant. Vagant. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it, but it's Vagante. Anyway, it seemed like a pretty normal, like, dungeon crawler, roguelite, platformer type of game. I think a lot of the pleasant surprise element of it, a lot of the unexpected fun, was a frequent audience member, Emrun, decided to join in and offered to play co-op with me. So that was pretty fun. This might have been the first game that we did like that. I think he played another one, like a duck game with me, that was in a previous set of game roulettes. But this one we actually got to be on voice chat and actually like played the game co-op for a while, and it was really fun. A lot of shenanigans went down, and I learned that it is a really fun co-op game, which is something I would have had no idea about if I were just playing it single player the whole time. So let's hear it for Vajant, and let's hear it for Emrun, who made it a great experience. There we go, there we go. I will now find the next pleasant surprise. All right. Oh, I was in the wrong folder. Hold up. We got... Okay, Shady Night was a very pleasant surprise. I can't say that I went into this one with low expectations. It was really like, I just kind of went into it with no expectations, because I had absolutely no idea what it was. And as it turns out, what I had here was kind of an early beta build of the game, because the game is on Steam currently, and the version that's on Steam is a lot more developed than the one that I have. But this one was just like action-packed. Really loved it. It's this first-person game where you're trying to climb up a tower in the middle of an ocean, and I had this really fun mechanic where you can throw your sword at enemies, and that would usually be a one-hit kill, but also a risky move. So it was just tons of fun. There was a bit of platforming, which I'm never crazy about in a first-person game, but it also had like physics objects, and it had a kick button, which was really satisfying to use. Look, you could even just kick your enemies, wait for them to get up, and just kick them off the tower into the ocean. That rules. I love any game where you can just send ragdolls flying. So, I don't know, maybe one day I will play the full version of that game if I ever like decide to buy it. But I think it would be worth. Shady Night was a really good one, so let's hear it for that one. All of the pauses that you hear, like after each game when I'm letting the applause run, that's me going through my folder and looking for the next video clip to show on screen. So this one was called Stories Untold. I didn't really know what to expect going into this one, but it looked like sort of a, I don't know, first-person horror game maybe, which isn't something that I play a whole lot of. And it turned out to be something really interesting. It's sort of a gimmicky game. Hold on. Oh yeah, I think this one is actually going to come up again in a future award category. So the premise of this one would be that you're sort of sitting at a desk interacting with an old computer and playing a text adventure game, but it would get really atmospheric. It was an interesting choice how like basically like less than a quarter of the screen is the actual space that you're interacting with, and the rest of the space is just for building atmosphere. But it was really great for that. And I really loved this second segment also, where they have you sort of performing experiments on what I think is like an alien heart. And I really loved the atmosphere of this one, how the equipment looks really old, and you're just being guided along to do these experiments that you really have no way of fully understanding and no way of knowing what it's going to lead to. So I went in with no expectations on this one, and it turned out to be something that I didn't even know that I wanted and didn't even know I would love so much. So let's hear it for Stories Untold. All right, now this category is a little different than the ones so far in that I've got 4 runners up. This next one is not actually the winner, but this one is called Wide Ocean Big Jacket. And it's again just sort of like a simple first person adventure game, but also was very dialogue heavy and all like text based dialogue. I guess it wasn't really first person, it was third person. Now that I see the clip I captured and actually remember. And what was pleasantly surprising about it was that it has a good amount of humor in the dialogue, and that dialogue does not fall flat. I play a lot of indie games for the game Roulettes, and a lot of them want to inject their sense of humor into their dialogue and kind of expect that to carry the game, and most of the time it can't. But Wide Ocean Big Jacket actually was on point. I actually really enjoyed the dialogue for it. It was like not so overtly quirky as to like become unbearable, which tends to happen with a lot of games in this style. So, oh yeah, yeah. Oh hey, what's up, homie? You're just in time. Um, anyway, where was I? Yeah, like actually like really liked how the characters were written, actually really liked the writing of the dialogue. I would probably play more of that because I'm sure it's not a very long game. And this is something that like I went into totally not expecting to enjoy and enjoyed it way more than I reasonably should. So let's hear that for Wide Ocean Big Jacket. And then I'll find the next clip for the actual winner of this category. Hold on, let me find it. Let me search through my folder here. Okay. Alright. Oh, God. I got jump scared by this game because it's a horror game. This one was called Corpus, spelled with a K. And like I said, I usually don't enjoy horror games all that much. I mean, I love horror movies, but I don't play a lot of horror games, let alone like first person horror games like this. And I got like really surprisingly drawn into this one. It was really thrilling, and I think I ended up playing this one for like twice as long as the time limit I had set out for it. Really liked it. It had a sort of like story progression that I enjoyed a lot. Really, the whole thing was just about you exploring an abandoned house. I think you're playing as like a real estate inspector or something like that. And you keep encountering spooky things and I guess like living through spooky memories that are associated with this house. You would get chased around. I don't know how well you can like see it in the clip I captured, but there was this like sort of shadowy person chasing you around who seemed to be just made of a swarm of bugs. This part I really loved. You're kind of going through like what looks like hospital corridors, and there's an invisible person chasing you, and you like, well, obviously you can't see them at all, but you can hear their footsteps as they get closer to you. And I don't know what happens if they catch you, but the only way to like stop their movement is to be looking in their direction. So you'll see these like bloody footprints on the floor and where they stopped when you started looking. It was so well done. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that in a game before, but very well executed. It made me really appreciate a horror game that I never thought I would get into at all. So give it up for Corpus, the winner of Most Pleasant Surprise. And let's hear it for all the winners there. A lot of great games. A lot of great games here. Okay. That's enough of that. Let's move on to the next category. This will be a fun one. Gotta change the text up here. Favorite art direction. It's not called best art direction because, I mean, you can't really make the best art. So this is just art that was my favorite. And this could be anything from like the atmosphere of the game to the sprite work or textures or models, maybe just overall atmosphere, all kinds of things like that. Let me pull up our first runner-up in art direction. Now this one this one you might call kind of a cop-out, but the first runner-up was Crystal Caves. And I'm going to say you might call this a cop-out because this isn't like a retro-styled game, but this is an actual retro game that I played. This is something that I remembered from like very early in my own childhood, and I really love this style of pixel art where they only have, I think, like 16 different colors, something like that. Maybe 32, I don't know. But I really love those retro pixel art type of games with the very limited color palettes. It's something that just really vibes with me a lot. So, I mean, for the time, I don't think this was like like particularly outstanding art direction, but it's something that you don't see a lot in modern times, and so it's something that I really enjoyed revisiting as an adult. So, give it up for Crystal Caves, if you wish. All right. Our next runner-up in this category was called Slain, Back from Hell. This one, the game itself was like a pretty average, like, side-scroller, a lot of like Castlevania influence, I think, but I really love the sort of horror setting that it had. The creature designs were really cool, and just the backgrounds and everything, it all came together for like a really great, just like nasty, bloody, gory environment that I think had just a really great cohesive vision. The game itself might not have been my favorite. It was pretty good. Had some pretty fun boss battles and stuff, and a cool like parrying system. But really like top-notch artwork on this one. So that is why it gets a welcome spot in this category. Okay. Now this next one, it might not be like art that I would want to see all the time, but it was something so unique that I had to shout it out here. This one was called Post Void. Like I said, I would not be able to tolerate video games if they all looked like this, but I've never seen a game quite like this one. I just kind of love the like psychedelic look of it and just the hyper saturation, just super bright oranges and reds and yellows. and it's really just like an absolutely hyperactive game. You're just constantly running through a corridor. You only have like 10 seconds to live, but you get like a couple more seconds as you kill each enemy, and I think you get more time if you get headshots. So it is just super fast paced and a very short game, but I never quite managed to make it to the end. You could get upgrades, like here I had received a shotgun. But yeah, it was pretty fun in itself. I usually, enjoy a shooter that's going to take up a little more of my time, maybe have a little more like story progression and not just be so like extremely fast paced and extremely short levels. But man, like there really is like nothing I had seen before that looks quite like this. So I had to give that a shout out for great art direction. That was Post Void. All right. Now my next runner-up in the category is called Freedom Planet. And I think this one is like pretty well known in the indie game scene. It's very much a tribute to like the old Sonic the Hedgehog games. The characters that you could play as had some moves that would be very similar to Sonic himself. And just the overall aesthetic of both the characters and the environments just, screamed Sonic the Hedgehog. But it's its own unique thing. The sprite work in this is just really great. It's not not exactly a retro style, because I mean, there was no retro console that could display this many colors and this many sprites and this many moving parts all at once. But it's very much, as you can see, a love letter to that era, and just very polished is how I would describe the art here. I'm kind of noticing that like every game so far has like a retro aesthetic in favorite art direction. I think that's pretty telling of my tastes. Because yeah, Crystal Caves just straight up was a retro game, and Slain is also like a lot of 2D pixel art, and Post Void looks like the original Doom games with the 2D sprites. This one looks like the old Sonic games. Definitely an undercurrent going on there. So let's see. Give it up for Freedom Planet, anyway. It was a pretty good game. Just with very polished artwork that you gotta appreciate. These characters were definitely like somebody's Sonic OCs that got adapted into something more unique, but still looked great. And now my favorite art direction, the actual winner of this category, is, believe it or not, a game that I have already mentioned earlier in the awards show. This was Islands Non-Places. And this is the first one to actually not have a retro art style. So see, it's not the only thing I like. But yeah, this one, it's just all about atmosphere. Like the the gameplay was very simplistic. You chose this just to hide your bias. Are you saying there is corruption in the awards show that I am the only member of? Have I corrupted myself? But yeah, like I said, the gameplay was very simplistic. You're just clicking on a series of objects and kind of watching things happen. But just all of the scenery looked just really hypnotic. The atmosphere, like I said, it's the number one quality of this game. This is basically just atmosphere distilled down into a simple game. So, I don't know, it might not have been my favorite thing to play, but it was my favorite thing to look at in the last batch of game roulettes. So it definitely deserves the award for that element alone. So let's hear it for islands, non-places. And for all of our runners-up as well. I definitely heard a woo in the stock applause sound that I'm using there. Next category. What have I got coming up next? Oh, this is going to be a weird one. This is going to be a short category due to circumstances that I will explain, but favorite soundtrack. The reason this one's going to be weird this time in particular is I was looking over my list of games that I've played in the last 6 months, and there were not a lot of them where I really remembered the soundtrack. And the usual tradition when I do this category is I will go on YouTube and search up the OST of all of the games that are nominated and just play a bit of the music in the background. I only nominated 2 games this time, and when I searched one of them, I could not find any of its music on YouTube. So the first one was called Flashpoint Fire Rescue. I think this one might have been based on a board game, based on my YouTube searching for the music. So you'll just have to take my word for it that this one had really good music. It was kind of like a lot of sort of big band or like swing type music, which you wouldn't think would be the type of music you'd see in a game like this that's like a turn-based strategy game about extinguishing a house fire. But it really did have a good soundtrack. So I guess if you do want to listen to that, you'll have to look up my old archived stream where I played it and just listen to it in the background there, because apparently none of it is on YouTube. Then, let me highlight the second game here. I want to get this category over with pretty quickly due to how poorly I was able to prepare it. But the other game was called Spookware. It was a pretty cool, like, WarioWare style game. And I actually was able to find some of its music on YouTube, so let's hear some of that in the background. It had a great, like, mix of musical styles, too. So, like, some of it sounds like sort of like pop rock music or like a little 80s style heavy metal. Some of it was very like synth heavy, some of it was just straight up chip tunes. Let me skip around in the OST here. Yeah, this is like the main menu theme of the game. It was just great. As for the game itself, it's kind of like WarioWare if it had more of a story, I guess. It starts out with these like 3 skeleton brothers that are like sitting in their basement watching horror movies, and the movies that they were watching were sort of the basis of some of the mini games. And then it goes into them leaving the basement and deciding they want to go to school. They encounter a bunch of wacky characters, have to play a whole bunch of mini games, and it has a, you know, a bit of a like sense of humor to it, which is alright. But really, for me, just like the main fun of it was seeing all the variety of the mini games. This was a pretty fun one where it asks you to draw a portrait of another character, and it just gives you these very limited tools to try and do it. So that was definitely a unique challenge. But yeah, I mean, this is like kind of the only one that I remember having a really like standout OST. So hold up. Did they use the same stock image of a red curtain for this game that I have in the background here? I don't think they did, but man, it looks very similar. But yeah, there it is. That's the OST in Spookware. Great OST. Would highly recommend. Anyway, everybody give it up for Spookware and Flashpoint Fire Rescue, and then I can very quickly move on to a different category. Okay. Usually the favorite soundtrack part is a little more interesting. Maybe I need to start like keeping track of games that I want to nominate for awards like right after I play them, so I can remind myself when there was a great soundtrack or something. So my next category is called Favorite Story or Setting. It's story or setting because like not every game that I play really has a storyline, as it were. So sometimes I like to just honor when they have a good setting or like aesthetic, atmosphere kind of thing. And let me pull up my first one in this category. The first one is definitely more setting than it is story. And this was called Air Memories of Old. Let's hear it for that game. That was a good game. Hold on. Is it actually playing the video here? What's going on? Oh, did I pause it? What's going on? Hold on. This one's like not playing properly for some reason. Let me try and reload it. See if it'll work. Oh, is it? Oh god, did it freeze? Hold on, what's happening? Am I still online here? Oh god, oh, hold on. Okay, I think I think we're back. All right. Now it's actually playing the video. Wow. That was pretty nerve-wracking. I always seem to have these weird technical difficulties every time I try to do a Game Roulette award show. Anyway, yeah, this one is more to do with the setting than the story material, because it's just like this really fascinating environment where it's all about like some society of people that live on sky islands, and you as the main character get this ability to transform into a bird and fly from island to island. And it's the kind of game you just want to like hang out in, I guess. Because it's all about like exploring these cool ancient temples, and when you're not going through those temples and solving puzzles, then you're just like flying through the sky without a care in the world. And that's just a really fun way to get around in a game. So I absolutely loved the story of this. So it was called Air Memories of Old, and Air is spelled A-E-R. Just, had to be a little weird like that. So give it up for that game, and I'll look up the next one. Okay, now somebody is talking in the background of my applause. I don't know if I appreciate that. Okay, next runner-up for stories or settings, we've got Horus. Excuse me. And this one starts out as just like kind of a simple side-scrolling platformer. You're playing as like a little robot guy, and it's got some pretty good pixel art. And this one, let me tell you, like within the first like 20 minutes, it went places like I would not believe. I'm going to try and wait and see if it gets to the particular cutscene that I have in mind, because this one I almost put this in like the most pleasant surprise category, except I kind of had a feeling going into this one that I would really enjoy it a lot. But man, it still surprised me in all kinds of ways. So to kind of like, I guess, spoil what happens within the first few minutes is like the robot Horus goes through some sort of trauma and then he just sort of like goes dormant. And then this cutscene happens, and I don't know if this is supposed to represent him like being asleep for like hundreds of years, or if this is just like some bizarre mental imagery that was going through his head during this time. But I saw this and I was just like, this game is unbelievable. It absolutely went places I was not expecting in the least. So yeah, let's hear it for Horus. And then it just kind of goes back to regular platforming after that like mind-blowing cutscene. All right. Next runner-up. This one, like, I kind of considered making this one the winner. It was really like high up there. This one was called In Sound Mind, and it was about just kind of exploring, I don't know, just a sort of apartment building, trying to unlock locked doors and stuff. But periodically, you would go into these sort of dreamscape environments. And if I remember right, I think it was about like a psychiatrist sort of reliving therapy sessions with his patients and used a lot of like visual metaphor to represent a lot of stuff about like different characters. And you know, you run into like some spooky enemies as you're doing this. They do give you a gun, although it's hard to like really classify this game as a shooter, but it had some just really great imagery in it. Like here's one of the monsters that chases you down. And you know, exploring an apartment building on its own is not all that compelling, but going into all of these different like dreamscape settings made it a lot more interesting. I think this was a part where yeah, I was going to say I think you could only see that enemy in the mirror, but I guess that was not totally true. But yeah, very memorable environments in Sound Mind. So let's hear it for that game. All right, and my next runner-up was called Tales from Off-Peak City. This one, man, I don't even know how to begin to describe it. It's sort of, well, this is, again, definitely more about setting than it is about story, because I could hardly tell you what was going on in this game. But the aesthetic style was so varied and just so mixed and so all over the place. I mean, it's kind of about you going around this city and doing a series of fetch quests for the most part. But man, every single corner you turned and every single building you went into, there was no way of anticipating what you were going to see. Just, I don't know, really weird characters, really weird environments, just 100% surrealism. Oh, this was a segment I really liked where you had to make a pizza. Definitely got very creative on that one. It was kind of like that, where like you never know what the game was going to ask of you. You never knew where you were going to go next. So it's just kind of a ride. Look at that beautiful pizza. Anyway, give it up for Tales from Off Peak City. All right, and that one is not even the winner of this category. The winner of this category, this might be kind of an upset. It's another one that has been a runner-up in a different category, but it was Wide Ocean Big Jacket. And yeah, give it up for that one. I feel kind of bad because like I already talked so much in the most pleasant surprise category about how the storytelling in this game was so good. So I feel like there's not as much for me to actually say now that I'm actually in the story or setting category. But yeah, this was about like a couple of kids and their, I think it's like the girl's aunt and uncle going on a camping trip, and just they kind of have a lot of really cool conversations, and there's a lot of great character building for all of these characters. The girl especially was just really funny. She had most of the like actually funny lines, and again, like it's really rare for me to play a game like this and to actually gel with its sense of humor. And this was one of those rare occasions. But yeah, I feel like I've already talked a lot about this one already. I've already explained why it was so great. I'd kind of like to go back and finish this one of these days, probably off stream. But that is the winner in favorite story or setting for the last batch of game roulettes. So let's have some applause for Wide Ocean Big Jacket. Alrighty. Gonna move on to another category. I think there's only there's not a lot left. There are one, two, yeah, three more award categories, and then we're just gonna go into like discussion of all of the non-award winners, I guess. So this one is a pretty fun one. The favorite gimmick category. Being that a lot of the games I play for Game Roulette are very small, like often single developer indie games, a lot of them will try to draw your attention by having some sort of gimmick or try to sport something that no game has ever had before, or just like really lean into a particular element that not a lot of games tend to focus on. So, this is to kind of give credit where it's due for the games that try to do that. And first runner-up for this category. This game was called Dujana, and the sort of gimmick in this one was that it was very mixed media. So the sprites were not all just created on a computer. It wasn't all like pixel art or 3D model art. It had a lot of physical models that were photographed and then imported into the game as sprites. Sometimes it used video, sometimes it used photography. Sometimes there was actual like video gamey art. Sometimes they used clay models like this. And there's a pretty well-known indie RPG called Hylix, which uses sort of the same claymation style that I think this game was going for. And again, it was like very psychedelic, very trippy, just like Hylics. But I thought that was a really enjoyable gimmick in Dujana, just being a mixed media game. It's not something that you see all that much. I feel like if I were to ever try and make a game, it would be fun to do a mixed media format like that. Just like make physical props that serve as the in-game characters. I think it's a really cool idea that I would like to see explored more. The original like Doom games did that a lot. A lot of the like guns and enemies were photos of actual like models and toys and stuff. And they kind of disguised it a lot in the original Doom. They made it look like actual pixel art, but sometimes it's fun when it's not disguised at all. And you can see, oh, this is clearly like clay models walking around. Something like that can be a real breath of fresh air. So let's hear it for Dujana. Okay, and my next runner-up for the favorite gimmick, this was a little game called Ben and Ed. This was something I had bought like ages ago and never got around to playing. Uh, Still liked it quite a bit, but didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. Essentially, you play as a zombie and you're running through a deadly obstacle course. And the gimmick here is that any number of your limbs can get chopped off as you are going through all the obstacles. And your character can keep on trying to persist through the obstacle course no matter how many limbs he loses. So here you can see you're just running on your hands only. And a fun thing about that is like sometimes that will make you short enough that some of the blades and obstacles are not even a concern anymore. You just run straight through some of them. And, of course, sometimes you get so messed up that you're down to nothing but a head. And at that point, you usually have to just restart or, go back to a checkpoint. But yeah, Ben and Ed, it was a pretty fun game. I think I found that it didn't have controller support when I got into it, and I was very surprised by that, because I think it's something that would play very well on controller. I think it would make it more enjoyable than it actually was. But let's give a round of applause for Ben and Ed anyway. Okay. Next runner-up in my favorite gimmick was a little game called Stumble Hill. The gimmick in this one is that it is a side-scrolling platformer with completely unnecessary physics built into it. They could absolutely have just made it a game where you play as a little penguin and he can just jump straight up in the air like any other 2D platformer character. Instead, they gave him like a full 180 degrees of tilt, so the angle of the ground will absolutely start to dictate the angle of your jump. And that's honestly like where a lot of the challenge in the game comes from, is just trying to overcome physics and like actually jump properly. It could be very easy, like you see right here, to just sort of lose control and, as is in the title, stumble backwards and like accidentally lose some of your progress. It's not quite to the level of a game like Getting Over It, where losing tons of progress becomes kind of the whole point. But it made the game like just quirky enough to actually stand out and not just be a boring generic 2D platformer. It actually made it like really interesting and memorable and more compelling than if it was just like a standard left and right, up and down type of game. And again, like the physics don't like make the game more interesting. There aren't like physics based puzzles. Well, I shouldn't say that the physics don't make the game more interesting. They absolutely do. But there's nothing in the game that ever calls for this physics engine to exist. It's just a little added flair that the game totally didn't need, but it's all the better for including it. So give it up for Stumble Hill. There's one more runner-up and a winner in this category. Both of them are games I have already talked about. So the final runner-up is Spookware. I liked this one quite a bit. The gimmick here being that it's sort of a WarioWare-like, and I don't think there are enough games like that in the world. And this one really executes it very well. It's kind of like if WarioWare had, I guess, more of a light horror theming to it. But I don't know. Like, not even all of the mini games would be horror themed. They all sort of fit into the different environments. So, like, when you start out in the basement watching horror movies, it is horror themed games. And then once you get to the school, it'll be a lot more various school themed mini games. But this is something I had never really seen before, was like not only a WarioWare-like game, but a WarioWare-like game with a narrative attached onto it. I mean, I think WarioWare games always have like a slight narrative. This one had a lot more of like characters that you could go around and talk to, and actual story progression. Something I had just, never really seen before. And I had a lot of fun with that. And it's something I want to see more of in the world. So that's it for Spookware. All right, and then my winner for this category. We have already seen it. It's called Stories Untold. And the gimmick here was that it's sort of a control system within a control system. So you are playing a computer game here, but more than that, you are playing a computer game as somebody else who is also playing a computer game within the computer game. And so when you get right down to it, it feels like, you're just playing a text adventure game. But the atmosphere that it adds and all of the sort of background objects really lend to that feeling and just really make it more interesting. And like I said, this second segment was where it really took off for me, because they have you sort of operating all sorts of equipment that you don't really understand. You just have to sort of follow instructions and then hope that something good ends up happening. Because really, all you can do is follow the instructions to make some sort of progress happen. But I just love this idea of like there being all kinds of analog equipment here that you have to interact with just to try and achieve a desired result, even if you're not totally sure what that result is. Loved that. Let's hear it for Stories Untold and all of the great gimmicky games that I played. that time in the applause, I think I heard somebody trying to whistle and like not quite being able to do it. Okay, my next award category, this is actually a new category. This one was not in the last 3 Game Roulette Awards, but it was something that I felt like mentioning. This one is called the Find the Fun Award. The premise of this one being, these were games that I played that I don't think I enjoyed in the intended way, or games where just my audience on Twitch made the experience a lot more fun than I expected it to be. And man, I think I've actually got 6 in this category, like 5 runners up and then another like actual winner. So let's dig into this one. My first runner up in the Find the Fun Award was Spec Ops: The Line. And if you're familiar at all with this game, you might know like it has a reputation of being a really genuinely good game. How on the surface it looks like just sort of a Call of Duty clone or something like that, and then turns out to have a very surprisingly compelling story down the line. I didn't really get that far into it. The only point that I reached was I decided during this game that I was going to go as far as I could, never actually shooting a single enemy. Because this game has a mechanic where you can just order your squad mates to shoot at guys, and then you can just hide behind cover the whole time while they do that. So that was what I tried to do for the whole like 45 minutes that I was playing this game. I was going to say at the beginning of this category that these would be a lot of games that were like totally not fun at all, but that I managed to make them fun. I kind of gave pause in describing them that way because, like I said, Spec Ops: The Line is known to be really good. I just sort of found my own brand of fun in it in a way that I think the developers probably did not intend for me to play. So that was Spec Ops: The Line. Let's hear it for that one. Where am I going to fit all of these runners up on the screen? There are so many. Okay, runner-up number 2 was called Kanji Combat, Learn Japanese to Survive. And this was just kind of a very basic visual novel crossed with RPG, and it's in the edutainment genre. And man, basically all of the fun that I got out of this game was just from roasting everything in it, from like the dialogue to like the characters. There's so much about it. I did actually play it, I did actually go through and try to learn this kanji as the game intended, and I played through their RPG battles, but like both me and the chat just spent so much time just making fun of the characters and the writing in this game. Just being totally mean to it. I'm sure, if you really do want to learn Japanese and you want to learn kanji, this is not a bad way to go. I think you will get that element out of it. It's very clearly like an RPG Maker type of thing based on the sprite work here. But yeah, I absolutely just could not stand some of the characters. But we still had a lot of fun with that one anyway, very unexpectedly. I think everybody expected it to be terrible, but we all made it fun in our own way, so let's hear it for that. Alright, now runner-up number 3 is Code Vein. And again, this is a game that I have heard is really good. And I decided to goof around with this game and just spent the entire 45 minutes within the time limit of Code Vein designing my character. And that was all I did for a whole 45 minutes. To the game's credit, you can very easily do that. You can very easily get absorbed for probably way more than 45 minutes trying to design a character here. It's honestly a very robust character creator. There's probably like a lot of videos and streams on the internet of people doing exactly what I did, just taking hours and hours to design a character. They give you so many great options in this game, and I did not even get to a single minute of actual gameplay. So I just kind of had fun with it in my own way, and I think I actually kept it in the game roulette pool, so if it ever comes up again, then one day I will pick up this character and play the actual game with it. So there you have it. If you ever want to watch me creating a character for 45 minutes, you can go look up that stream. Let's hear it for the Code Vein there. Okay, the next one, this is going to be a tricky one to talk about, actually. First up here is Broken Sword 2. The whole Broken Sword franchise has become just kind of a game roulette staple. I own all 5 of the games in this series, and so far I have played 3 of them on streams, but only the first 45 minutes of those 3. So you're kind of getting a picture of how the series evolved, but also kind of not really, because I've not even come close to completing any of them. So, for those, it's just sort of fun to, like, try to piece together the stories of the previous games based on the first 45 minutes of each one. And I said this was going to be a tricky one to talk about because this right here is Broken Sword 2. And I also played Broken Sword 3. Oh shit, I accidentally clicked on a video. Hold up. Okay, well, I'm back to the applause video. Anyway, there's Broken Sword 3. And so, the interesting thing about these games is they really seem to directly continue off of each other. It kind of seems like you needed to know what happened in the past games to understand what's going on in each one. And so a lot of this was me just kind of like goofing on point-and-click adventure games in general. I do love point-and-click adventure games, but there's also just a lot of inherent silliness to them. So there was a lot of that in me trying to sort of play the Broken Sword games. I'm probably never going to play any of them to completion, but now I cannot wait for 4 and 5 to come up on the next wheel spins. They're still in the pool, so we're going to get there one of these days. And you know, they don't seem like bad point-and-click adventure games by any means. This isn't like a case where they become so bad it's good. It's just kind of like, I would have absolutely no hope of understanding what's going on in these games, and I have no business playing beyond the first one. So it's just sort of fun to stumble through them and try to figure out what's going on, just in the least bit. Well, this part right here was a fun QuickTime event, where you could see in the first clip that I got my character fucking shot in the face. She just instantly died, and that was the end of the game. See, that time I actually succeeded the QuickTime event. Alright, but yeah, let's hear it for the whole Broken Sword series. gets shot in the face anyway. Okay, now the fifth runner-up. This is actually going to be in a very similar category to the last one. This one was called Anna's Quest. Yeah, and the reason that this one gets a Find the Fun award is because I spent almost this entire stream just stuck in this one room and just trying to figure out all the items I needed to grab and the puzzles I needed to solve, and got through just all kinds of dialogue. And both myself and the chat gave this one all kinds of trash talk about how puzzle solutions that I had attempted fully should have worked, but just wouldn't. Did not get too far in this one. Didn't really feel compelled to play more, but it was still inexplicably a really fun experience, just for the sake of kind of arguing with the game and seeing how everybody else interpreted it as well. So, if I had played it alone, just offline, it would not have been fun at all, but playing it with the audience really made it a fun game. So let's give it some applause for that. Okay, now the next one. The winner in this category was Amnesia Memories. And what a great title, isn't it? And this has nothing to do with the Amnesia series of horror games. It's actually just an anime dating simulator visual novel. I think the only reason I had it in the pool is because it has very high reviews. Dating simulator visual novels are totally not my genre of game. I totally don't care about them. And so I spent this whole game session just playing mini games. Apparently there are a few different mini games in this one, and they let you play through them before you've even played the game itself. So I just had a hell of a time with that. There was an air hockey mini game. This was like a rock, paper, scissors mini game. And I figured out how to game the system in this one by just like always picking the same card and then just like, I don't know. This was like it's like a weird Japanese version of the game where you have to like either reach for a helmet or reach for a hammer depending on who won. And if you can hit the other person with the hammer before they put on the helmet, then you get a point. So yeah, all I did really was just like pick the same thing over and over again and then pick either guard or attack. And this one just like absolutely had a hell of a time just trash talking it. I played very little of the actual game itself. That's what this part is. Really, the majority of my time was spent playing air hockey and rock, paper, scissors. So this was one that like I actually did not expect to be the least bit fun, and actually really enjoyed it a lot. I think if not me, then like maybe a member of the audience ended up posting a clip from this stream in my Discord at some point of just like a really funny moment. But yeah, had a surprising amount of fun with that one. So let's hear it for Amnesia Memories. All right, and now we will move on to the final award category. And there's still going to be more after this final category, but this one is sort of the finale award. It is the highest recommendation. Um, game I think you should buy. This would be, if this was the Oscars, this would be the best picture. These are just the games that I think overall were the best and overall deserve your money. Once again, everything that's in this category is a winner, but there is going to be one overall winner that I think probably has the best value for its money, or the best value for its cost, or however you want to put that. So my first runner-up, I'm going to be kind of an unconventional one here. Not because it's not a great game or anything, but this one was called Janosik, or Janosik, or something like that. It was Janosik. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that. This one was just a really great old-fashioned 2D platformer, kind of reminiscent of a game like Crystal Caves that came up earlier in the stream here. It's kind of a Metroidvania, where you're kind of exploring these levels, fighting a lot of enemies, and you eventually get items that let you explore new locations, and that kind of thing. I say that this one is an unusual case because when I was looking it up to see how much the game costs, like to see how highly I would recommend it, apparently this game is just free, just all the time. I thought I got it in a free giveaway, but I guess it just became permanently free. So you can just download this game and own it and play it. And I would highly recommend doing that if you're into this sort of genre at all. It was a really good time. So it's worth your money because it costs none of your money. So let's hear it for that. Oh man, I really loved this boss fight in the game. It was just this really fucked up looking Loch Ness monster. That was so great. What a great gamer moment. Okay, now next runner-up. This one was called The Messenger. This one was in a sort of similar genre to the last game, except instead of being like a Metroidvania, this was just sort of a level-based, side-scroller, go from left to right sort of game. And this one had almost an NES-like aesthetic to it, where it was pretty limited color sprites, pretty cool pixel graphics. A lot of the sprites would only be like 2 or 3 colors, which was really cool. And this one, I don't know. To kind of look at it, it seems like a very generic sort of game. There have been so many retro-style platformers like this. But this one just, like, really nailed it. It turned out to be just a really fun final product. And wasn't really as hard as I expected. It was, like, pretty easy overall. I think I very rarely, if ever, died in the game. Well, okay, I guess I did die. You can see that I did right there. But really, like, reasonable level of difficulty. Whereas usually a lot of these retro-style games try to go for extreme difficulty, mostly just to kind of pad out their length, I think. But this one was really great. It could very well be cousins with a game like Shovel Knight. It's something a lot like that. But yeah, I have wanted to kind of go back and play more of that at some point, but I have not taken the time to do that just yet. This was another like really great element of the game. Really great boss battles. I really liked that about it. So give it up for The Messenger. Oh yeah, I should have mentioned, the usual retail price of The Messenger is $19.99. It seems kind of high for, you know, a retro-styled game like this, but I've gotten it in a free giveaway at least once, maybe twice, So that does happen with it, and it goes on sale a lot. So I would highly recommend buying that one for cheap if you are into that sort of game. Another sort of interesting thing here, I'm just noticing all of the highest recommendation games are also games that have not gotten an award in any other category tonight. That rarely happens, but that's pretty cool. Okay, my third runner-up, it was called Hypnagogia. This one very well could have been the winner of like best story or setting. I really feel like I should have nominated it in that category, but there were so many other great games in that category, or maybe like for best art style, that I just kind of wanted to keep this game out of it since it was already going into the highest recommendation tier. But a big part of the reason I recommend it so much is that the art style is incredible and the settings are so atmospheric. This was another like very trippy game where you kind of never know what you're going to see next. It's a lot of like first person exploration in dreamlike, bizarre environments. It's really hard to like nail down. In a way, it's sort of similar to first person adventure games like Myst or some older things like that. But I don't know. There's not really any game that I would say this is very much like. It's just a very unique experience, and the variety in the vistas and the scenery, more than anything, make it worth your time. And aside from that, this is not a very expensive game at all. Its normal full price is only $9.99. So if you see this one going on sale, I would say like it is absolutely something worth playing. Even paying the full $10 for it, I would not be disappointed with what I got. Not at all. This is one, again, that I feel like I should revisit one day, but have yet to get around to. Anyway, definitely give a big round of applause like this demon here is doing for Hypnagogia. That's Hypnagogia. I really need to start printing the names on these video clips. Okay, the final runner-up of games I think you should buy was Distance. This is, once again, a genre that I don't really dip into that much. It is basically a racing game. Although you don't race against other cars, so maybe it's just more of a driving game. This one sat on my Steam wish list for probably years. Finally bought it, and then finally played it, and I was blown away by this one. It is such a cool game. The sort of gimmick that made me interested into it that I saw in the trailer was you'll see these sort of like laser traps in the tracks, and your car can get sort of slices cut off of it, and sometimes that means the game is over, and sometimes you just keep going with a slice cut out of your car. There was a lot of really cool stuff like that. Your car can jump, as you can see, and if we get to another point in the clips that I gathered here, there are like points where your car will start flying, and there are parts where gravity will change. There's a lot of just like really mind-bendy elements in Distance that I really loved playing. It made me wonder why this game is not more popular. I feel like this could go right alongside a game like Trackmania in the sort of thing that like speedrunners would flock to. But just like, I don't know, the level designs were so creative and so fascinating looking. It has a great look, it has a great feel. It's just all around thrilling to play. Oh, that was me sort of flailing, trying to jump to a different part of the track that had different gravity. Just really loved this. Hold on, it just froze up. Oh wait, nope, it's still going, maybe? Technical difficulties? Well, anyway. Distance was really close. Oh, wait, nope, it just disappeared. Hello? Distance? Okay, well, I got it back. Anyway, I was saying distance was very close to being my top recommendation. The only reason it's not my number one recommendation is it has a pretty high price tag, I feel like. So this one is $24.99 at its normal list price. And personally, I think it's worth the money. It is very good. I did absolutely love this one. Oh wow, it froze up at like the exact same point in the video again. Weird. I don't know what's wrong with this one. I guess that's just going to keep happening. Anyway, my advice would be to wait for Distance to go on sale. I think I bought it for like probably 10 bucks, and it's 100% worth that. It's just like an absolute adrenaline rush with really mind-bendy and creative levels that I really want to play more of. So give a round of applause to Distance. Alright, now the number one game, the winner of game that I most think you should buy out of the last batch of game roulettes. It was called Haven Park. So let's hear it for Haven Park. What a great game this was. This one, as you can see, it has a very Animal Crossing-esque aesthetic. It's a very like laid back and relaxing kind of game. The premise is that you play as this little bird guy, and you are going around a campground, and it's your job to clean things up and find crafting materials in order to upgrade the various campsites around the campground. You build sleeping quarters, and you build attractions and like food stalls and fun stuff. And you really just like do a lot of exploring. There's some little side quests, but it's a whole lot of like collecting materials and crafting things to build. And just really had a lot of fun with this one. It's just a really nice laid back thing that you could probably finish in an afternoon. But just from the art style to the graphics to the overall atmosphere of it, this one really was just like the most cohesive recommendation that I would make. I really loved this one a lot. And the other great thing about it is that it's a pretty low price. It's only $8.99 at its normal list price. Honestly, I would not have been disappointed to pay even more than that for it, but I myself got it in a free giveaway, so there's none of that. But it is absolutely worth other people's money. If this kind of looks like your aesthetic, looks like your style, and you want to play a nice, relaxing game like that, then you should keep an eye out for Haven Park, and you should probably buy that one. If I recommend that you buy any game here tonight, I recommend that you buy Haven Park. So give it up for that one. And it disappeared, and so did Distance again. Okay. There must have been some kind of rendering error with some of my videos. Because I don't know, some of them are just disappearing for reasons unknown. But, yeah. Anyway, that's the final, really, award category. So if you're just here for the awards, then you have gotten through all of them. But I still want to go through and sort of discuss the unmentioned games and why they didn't win awards. Maybe some that even should have won awards. In fact, let's see. What I'm going to go into next is the really deserves some kind of award. So there's not going to be an actual winner in this category. These are all just going to be sort of games that I enjoyed and that didn't really fit into any of my like letterboxed categories. So these are just some kind of things that I want to talk about that I thought were pretty good. And I'm just going to go through them in like alphabetical order. First we had the Angry Video Game Nerd game. This one, was pretty good. It was very much a retro style platformer, much like the games that you would see brought up in this person's videos. It wasn't my favorite in that style, obviously, but, by no means was it a bad game. It had cool themed levels and a lot of references, so if you were an old fan like me, there was a lot of stuff that you would appreciate. So this one, by no means was it a bad game, but didn't really feel like putting it in any of the other award categories. There was also Bayonetta. This is something I really need to play more of. I had never played a Bayonetta game before I played it for Game Roulette. I just really loved how absolutely ridiculous all of the cutscenes are. The combat itself was pretty fun, although a lot of the time I felt like I was just mashing buttons and watching cool stuff happen. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But this is the kind of game where, like, the cutscenes are so stylized, they are just such a treat that I would want to play through more of the game just to see more of the ridiculous action set pieces like this happening. Then there was Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons. This one almost made it into the favorite gimmick category, but I didn't really love the game or the gimmick enough to put it in there. But the gimmick here was that each one of the control sticks on your controller controls one of the two characters, and so you're just sort of simultaneously moving both of them around and doing a lot of like puzzle solving that requires two people. It was, a totally okay game, but not anything that I was crazy about. Probably wouldn't play more of it. Just saying. Then Cosmic Express was another one that I feel like deserved some kind of award. This was a, little puzzle game where you have to build a train track and structure the line in such a way that you pick up passengers and then drop them off at drop-offs. It's a pretty simple concept. A pretty cool little, like, I've got 5 minutes to burn kind of puzzle game. And it has a neat art style, not like my favorite art style. Not, something strong enough to win an award. But still, a pretty cool little game. Like, once you could actually figure out exactly how you had to build the train track, it would be pretty satisfying. Although, a lot of my gameplay time was just like sitting there staring at the puzzle and just being like, what the hell am I supposed to do now? So it probably wasn't the most entertaining thing to watch. So I'm realizing that I captured like 2 to 3 minutes of like a lot of these games that I'm only going to be talking about for like 30 seconds. Probably kind of wasted a lot of my time in pre-production here. The next one is called Curious Expedition. And I have another game that I frequently confuse this one with, and I can't think of which one was which. I think it was called like Bravest Explorers or something like that. But that was from the previous batch of game roulettes. Curious Expedition was cool though. It's a very like resource managey strategy game. And kind of hard to describe how it works overall. But it would be about you take an expedition to a foreign land, you try to raid it for artifacts and stuff, and kind of get a score at the end based on how well your party did. But it was really cool in a lot of ways. It's something I would like to play more of. Then we got, let's see, Day of the Tentacle. This is one that I was tempted to put in like the favorite art style category. But even I could recognize that was just my personal bias, because this is an old LucasArts point-and-click adventure game. I found out that, while I was playing it, that it was a sequel to another point-and-click adventure game called Maniac Mansion. And I believe that entire game was contained within this game as like a mini game. So that's just, another cool bonus. But I've heard for years that this is like one of the best point-and-click adventure games in that sort of history. I've heard that it has a great sense of humor. It's very well animated and everything. I really like the retro style graphics, but it also had a modern enhanced graphics style that you could swap to. I just have a lot of nostalgia for that time period and playing like Monkey Island and Loom. So I've always felt like I should give Day of the Tentacle more of a chance. Divinoids is another one here. This is the sort of game that is the exact reason I go through this category. Was I felt like it was kind of a crime that I wasn't able to really fit Divinoids into any category, because it is really just an all-around great, fun game. It has elements of the old Rampage games, because you're playing as a giant monster, and you do some destroying of buildings. But yeah, it also had like a lot of combat, and all of the characters had like transformations and different forms, and they would control in different ways. I think this, I don't know if this was like the full version of the game or if again I was playing a beta, but it was pretty cool. It really deserved more credit than I was able to find room for in the awards show here. Next up, we had Don't Escape. And following up Divinoids, this one, honestly, was not like nearly as much fun, but it was still a pretty cool game in its own way. It was another sort of point-and-click adventure game, a lot of puzzle solving. It had this sort of post-apocalyptic setting, I guess. But other than that, I don't really remember a whole lot about it. I think it had a sort of time limit mechanic, and you had to solve enough puzzles within a certain time limit, or you would lose. And, you had to do certain things like get a generator running, and like secure sources of food and water, things like that. I don't know, it seemed pretty good, but I never got all that far into it. Then, next up, we had Evergate. This one, I don't know, it's sort of in the vein of Hmm. I don't know. It's hard to say what this is in the vein of. I was going to say something like Limbo or Braid, sort of like a sort of gimmicky puzzle platformer type of game where you would be given these short levels and just had to use a few different puzzle mechanics to try and navigate all of them. It was fairly fun. I also got stuck on several of them as I was playing it, but some people in my chat at the time found a lot of enjoyment out of this one and wanted to play it themselves. So, some good did come out of me playing it. It had a cool visual style, at least. Not my favorite among the game roulette games, but, worth pointing out. Next up was Fort Triumph. This one almost went into the most pleasant surprise category, but just wasn't quite strong enough to make it there. This one was basically, what if you took Heroes of Might and Magic 3 and crossed it with XCOM? It's very much trying to be just a mashup of both of those games, but not really as complex as either one. Still, I mean, the idea of fantasy XCOM was cool. It was neat that you would get like a whole party of characters and they would have special abilities, and you could like interact with the environment in interesting ways, like in the actual combat segments. So I don't know. It's sort of a fusion that I think there is definitely room for in the world, but I don't know. It feels honestly kind of like a watered down version of both games. Not to the point that it's like really bad, but you might as well just play one of those two games rather than play kind of a diet version of both combined into one. And the next game was called Hey Park Boy. This one I kind of think might have been trying to go for, I don't know, maybe like a Katamari type of vibe, maybe something along those lines. And the premise is that you play as a little alien dude and you land in a very like disused park, and it's your job to water the flowers and get more flowers to grow, and over time just very slowly, very incrementally improve this park. And it seemed pretty honestly good. The gameplay was very repetitive, but that can also make for like a pretty relaxing time if that's what you're in for. So it was, definitely not bad. I feel like if I played one or two more sessions of it, I might even like completely finish it. I don't know. But it was a pretty cool, relaxing little title there. Then we had Hob. This one was made by some of the developers who made the Torchlight games, which I love, but this one had very little in common with Torchlight. It was honestly just like mostly a sort of, I don't know, isometric Zelda-like sort of game where there's a bit of combat and a bit of puzzle solving, but, nothing too complicated on either end there. It was, fairly good, but definitely not the best work by this studio, and I don't know if it's really something that I would play more of. But, it's got a neat art style. The gameplay was solid. It was like totally serviceable, but just not anything that seemed to really excel in anything that it set out to do. It was just kind of like, it was pretty good. Oh, I mentioned this game earlier. Limbo was another one that really deserves some kind of award. And Limbo's reputation preceded it for me. I know that it became a whole subgenre of like minimalist 2D side scroller featuring little child in horrific environment. And just like a puzzle platformer with that kind of theming. But it was actually like really fun. I was saying as I was playing it that like I needed to go back and like finish it on my own time because it's also not a very long game, but I had a pretty fun time with it. I didn't realize it was going to be like physics based. So there was, some fun ragdoll physics when your character would die or when like other creatures would die and stuff like that. And yeah, for like months and months now, I've been meaning to go back and like finally finish this game and still have not done it. I've kept it installed all this time and just have not followed through. Something I would consider very similar to Limbo was Little Nightmares. Again, a game where you're playing as like a little kid in a big, scary environment. And this one was like a more like 3D puzzle platformer. I really love the art style in this one a lot more. That's probably what it came close to receiving. I think if there is an award it deserves to receive, it would be for the art style. I think I even like had it in that award category before I removed it in favor of something else. Because it is pretty cool. I would like to see more of this game and like get into a lot more of it because it has a really cool style all its own. Then we had Lost Potato, and this one was all right. I don't know. I don't think I played it for the full 45 minutes, but it was pretty good. It seemed very much like it was trying to go for the Ed McMillan art style, like a Binding of Isaac or Super Meat Boy art style, but, it wasn't quite on that level. It's just a very simple sort of arcade premise where you have to defeat a room full of enemies by punching other projectiles into those enemies or punching them into hazards. And it was pretty cool. I can't say it was a bad game by any means. This developer actually made a follow-up game that I'm very interested in playing. It's called Brotato. That's sort of a Vampire Survivors like, and I might give that a try one of these days. I don't know. Oh, I think the video froze up. I had that problem again. So that's a sign I better move on to the next game. Oh geez, it's freezing up again. Hold on. Oh god, let's see if I can get OBS to cooperate. I don't know what happened here. I guess like somehow some of the like videos that I saved of these games must have gotten corrupted. I must have had some kind of rendering errors that I had no idea about. I don't know. Okay. Wait, what? Is it? Okay, it's working again. So the next one that really deserved some kind of award was Morbid, The Seven Acolytes. Um, I remember looking at reviews of this game before playing it, and the reviews were like decent, but not like super high. And once I played it, I was really surprised by that. It seemed honestly really good. It seems to really be going for like a 2D Dark Souls type of vibe. And honestly, like the combat was pretty fun. I liked the attacks having a sort of weight to them. And there were like various weapons you could find that all had their own unique feel. And as I was going through it, I was just like, between the art style and the actual like combat and gameplay, I was just like, man, why do people not like this game more? It's actually like really fun. So I don't know. That might be something I play more of on my own time in the future. And another one was, oh god, why is it so big? Hold on. This one was called Mother Gunship. This developer had made another game that I played before called Tower of Guns, and this felt very much like a follow up to that. Um, the kind of cool gimmick in this one, which, honestly almost got it into the favorite gimmick category, was that the guns were very customizable. And you could like attach a lot of different parts to your different guns to make them function in different ways. And you get both a left click gun and a right click gun. So it was like, it really gave a lot of room for creativity in that way. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But yeah, overall, it wasn't my favorite. I definitely did have a good amount of fun with it. Yeah, this was like a wacky gun effect that I ended up with where like I think all of those pink spheres would form and I think they would slow down enemies that got caught in them. So there was a lot of like room for wacky creative builds. I think it had a lot of potential. Now, my next one was called Mutant Year Zero. And if I remember correctly, this one, I think it might have been like part stealth game and then part XCOM clone. And it really nailed the XCOM like combat element pretty well. It was kind of like what did I talk about earlier, a Fort Triumph, except I think Mutant Year Zero had overall better combat. This one I would probably be more likely to play more of. And it had pretty cool elements of like character customization and that kind of thing. Yeah, I just saw it pop up there where it was called mutation points. And you could like unlock skills for your characters or change weapon proficiencies and stuff like that. So, there's a lot of cool stuff going on in there. Next up, we had. Hold up. This one was called On Rusty Trails. And this one, honestly, I felt really bad that I could not squeeze this into like any other category just because there was like so much stiff competition. But it was really good. I mean, it's basically like a pretty simple, 2D platformer where your character can cling to any surface. And it also had this pretty cool, like, I don't know what you would call it. I guess like a costume shifting mechanic where you would kind of have to shift between two modes, sometimes mid jump to land on different colored platforms. And that was a creative element to it. The platforming in general is just really fun in that game, and I wish I could have like highlighted it somewhere else other than this final category. Plus it had like a pretty cool art style. Not like my very favorite, but I don't know, this one was eligible for so many things. Like it would have been eligible for favorite gimmick, could have been eligible for I don't know, story or setting. Just really a lot that I liked about it that I wish I could have brought up somewhere else. Just, every single, like every individual element of it that I liked a different game better in the same way. Moving on, we had One Way Heroics. This was a genre that doesn't come up as often as I would like in the game roulettes, but this one was actually a traditional roguelike and also had a gameplay gimmick which almost got it a spot in favorite gimmick, which was that basically you have to keep moving to the right or else you would get like overtaken by like a black fog or something like that. But even without that gimmick, it was still just like a pretty generally fun game. It had like a lot of unlockable classes and a lot of cool stuff like that that I feel like would keep me coming back to it. Although I still not still have not revisited this game since I played it on the stream. But it deserves more of my time. I should have played it more. All right, next one. We had Orcs Must Die 2. And, I don't know. I had pretty different feelings to this one than I did from, like, One Way Heroics and On Rusty Trails. This one isn't, like, so good that I really wished I could have put it into a category, but it's just kind of like, you know, there was totally nothing wrong with this game. There wasn't anything I hated about it, but I just couldn't really think of a good context in which to talk about it, and so it goes into this catch all category. If you're not familiar with this franchise at all, which I think now has maybe 3 games, it's just, a good traditional defense game where a bunch of orcs are trying to get from point A to point B, and it's your job to lay traps and use weapons to stop them from getting to point B. A pretty cool game, honestly. Like, I cannot say that I really disliked anything in Orcs Must Die 2. Just wasn't really as much of a standout title as some others. Then we had Rising Hell. Now, this was like another one that I wished I could put into a different category, because it's sort of like once you got like really into the flow of this game's combat and gameplay, it felt really satisfying. Like once you kind of hit your tipping point where you are like really kicking a boss's ass and you've like really gotten the hang of fighting it, this game would be so satisfying. It also has a lot of like unlockable characters and weapons and stuff that give it like a lot of replay value. And it's got a premise that's about as simple as it looks. You're just trying to climb up a tower and kill every enemy that gets in your way along that path. I really like genuinely had fun with this one. Like on any average game roulette night, this could easily be the winner of like best game of the night. So I don't know. It's just kind of a shame that I couldn't fit it in anywhere else. Now the next one, this was interesting. This was called Roar, and you know, if you look at this game, if you watch any amount of gameplay of it, it looks very much like an unfinished game. I think it was even missing like some sound effects and stuff as I was playing it. It's extremely unpolished and just like, I don't know, overall not great, but somehow I still got like a pretty good amount of enjoyment out of it anyway. There's just something inherently fun about like playing as a giant monster and like smashing up a bunch of buildings. And you get that experience in Roar. It's definitely not like something I would recommend people buy, but it's something that I would like to see sort of replicated in a more polished game, or maybe have a sequel put out for it, because it's really like should not have been released in the state that it was released in. It has pretty bad Steam reviews, and I can't blame people for that. But it just had like a level of charm that I appreciated. I just could not, in good conscience, give it any award. Alright, now this was called Roombo First Blood, and this one almost made it into like the favorite gimmick category, because I've never played a game quite like this. There's really nothing in the world like this one. You play as a little Roomba vacuum cleaner, and the house that you are in charge of is getting invaded by waves and waves of burglars. So you have to set traps for them. You can like pick up knives and attack them with them. And you also have to try and remain fairly undetected, or, figure out how to fight back against them if you are discovered. And had a really good time with that one. It had very amusing ragdoll physics and just a lot of fun to it like that. Um, it also had a really fun element where after you killed all of the burglars in horribly violent ways, you had to clean up as much of the blood as you possibly could within like a 1 minute time limit. And it's like a totally impossible task. Like, there's absolutely no way you're ever going to clean up all the blood unless you were like cleaning it all as you go. But it was just, really fun, really funny, really entertaining. I wished I could put that in another category, but again, the competition was really stiff this time, so I just could not squeeze it in anywhere else. And next up was the Spyro Reignited trilogy. Technically, I only played the first Spyro game in this setting, and it was actually my first time playing any Spyro game. But, didn't really feel the need to put this in an award category because I feel like the reputation of Spyro precedes it. Everybody knows it's like a stone cold classic. And the remake is also great. It was a really fun little, somewhat platformer, just general action game. And I left the trilogy in the roulette pool so that one day I will play the second and third games. But yeah, I would really love to go back one day and like play more of the first game. So it would probably be a good Steam Deck play, just a good like laid back classic platformer with a modern coat of paint on it. Yeah, everybody knows Spyro, everybody loves Spyro, and it's for good reason. Part of the point of the Game Roulette Awards is to draw attention to indie games that people might be less aware of. And I feel like everybody's very aware of Spyro, so there's no need for me to shout it out, like, even furthermore. Speaking of games that are already very well known that I felt like I didn't need to shout out anymore, we had the Stanley Parable. I think everybody knows about this one. I even mentioned it when I was giving an award to The Corridor, that it's a very meta narrative game where you'll have a narrator narrating everything that's happening, and you can make a series of choices to either comply with the narrator or rebel against the narrator. And it has tons and tons of branching story paths, and lots of secrets, lots of gimmicks, lots of cool stuff. But yeah, I think more than anything, this was just another one of those cases where I feel like everybody already knows this game, so what good does it do for me to just be one more person talking about it even further? Okay, and then another one. We had Steam World Quest. I think this is like, man, like the fourth game that I've played in the Steam World series on the Game Roulettes. Probably like, I don't know, third or fourth. And they have like yet another game that's upcoming that's going to be in yet another genre. But this was the Deck Builder Steam World game. And it was a really genuinely good one. I had never played a deck builder quite like this, where essentially you pick out your whole series of moves that you're going to do, and then your characters carry out that whole sequence of moves. Oh, okay, there was definitely an error in the rendering there. But yeah, so even among deck builders and card battlers, it was kind of unique in its way. And, really just a decently good game. Boy, there were like multiple rendering errors in this one, I guess. And this is something that I hope to revisit on my own one day, but as of now, I have not. Next one was Stubbs the Zombie. And I think this was a game from like, I don't know, maybe the original Xbox or maybe Xbox 360, like maybe that console generation. And it was just like kind of a cult hit from that time period. I played it, and I had a pretty good time with it. I honestly didn't really dislike this one at all. How many games are there out in the world where you play as a zombie and you get to just run around causing chaos? It was a pretty neat concept. I really liked it for that, and I think it deserved more of a shout out. It was really cool how you would go around eating people's brains, and then they would get back up and turn into zombies of their own. And it had this sort of retro future setting, which I didn't realize going into it. I don't know if it really does a lot with that setting, but it's just cool. It's just neat to have it set there. Yeah, there was this great vehicle segment where you're blasting your enemies with a cannon and running them over. A lot of really great stuff like that. There was a lot to love in Stubbs the Zombie. Then we had... What's up next? Sunset Overdrive. I think this was a game that had a lot of buzz when it was first coming out. I believe it's by Insomniac Games, I want to say. The people that made the Ratchet and Clank games. And so, in that vein, you kind of got a lot of unique weapons in this game. And it was just overall a lot of really fun elements tossed into one game. There's, this rail grinding mechanic. I don't know why you can grind on rails at will, but it's just a fun thing to do in a video game, so you can do it. And yeah, there were all kinds of weapons in the game. And I spent a lot of time just watching effectively trailers for the different weapons, just because I wanted to see what they would all do. And seems like, a perfectly good action game that I wish I had the time to play more of. I think if it, came out when I was a kid, when I had a lot more free time, then I would have played a ton of this game. Because it's just, all about, you bounce around on cars, you grind on rails, you blast tons of enemies. It's a very video game. Just very indulgent. Very great. I liked it quite a bit. A couple more of the really deserves some kind of award games. Next I had the Talos Principle. This one, I was surprised to learn, was made by the developers who made the Serious Sam games, and it's even in their engine. But this one was just a first-person puzzle game, kind of in the vein of something like, your Portals, games like that, where it's very, non-violent, but you're just kind of navigating a bunch of interesting environments and trying to get from point A to point B. Yeah, this was a cool mechanic. You would carry these little, jamming devices around that would disable a, piece of electronics, and you had to use that to kind of get around enemies that would attack you. Sometimes you could disable them directly. And it seemed to have, a lot of, cool, mysterious story elements. I'm going to wait and see if the clips that I gathered get to, one of my favorite views from the game. Because it was really compelling and made me want to play more. And I've heard that the game is great overall anyway. I mean, this was a cool part, how you could explore the beaches. There were a lot of, surprisingly varied environments. But most of the puzzles took place in these, ruins, I guess they are. With just a lot of, high technology pasted onto them. And yeah, you would collect a Tetris block at the end of each of the puzzles, and you had to eventually combine those to open a door. And then I think we're about to get to... Yeah, this was a part that I found really compelling. You get to this gigantic tower that stretches up into the sky, and I think there was like, some omniscient voice warning you not to go to the tower, and that just made me want to go there all the more. It was just mind-boggling. Okay, last one for this category. It was Void Bastards. This was another one where like there were a lot of gameplay elements that I liked. But I don't know. I couldn't in good conscience call it a bad game. But I don't know, it just didn't like draw me in as much as some others. It kind of involved like exploring derelict spaceships, fighting some enemies, and gathering resources. And just kind of had a gameplay loop like that. It had a pretty cool art style, very comic booky. So I liked that about it. And those are the last of the really deserves some kind of award nominees. So next we're going to get into the games that I just didn't like for one reason or another. Traditionally, I've had a category here called non-functionals, and those would be like games that would crash on me or just otherwise totally not work. But I didn't really have anything like that this time. So the next category that I'm going to go into, I have labeled Too Hard for Me. And these were games that I stopped playing just because I got frustrated with them, which, I think is perfectly reasonable. They just clearly were not for me because I was too much of a scrub. First one here was XCOM 2. And I really loved the XCOM game that came right before this. I played that one to completion. And I just kind of played the first couple missions of XCOM 2 kind of like a dumbass. And in like the second mission that I attempted, I ended up like getting my whole crew killed. Part of that was like I had them standing on a truck, and I did not realize that the truck could explode. So I lost like at least one of my crew members from that, which was just a very stupid, easily avoided mistake. And so, if I ever revisit XCOM 2, I feel like I could do a lot better at it. But yeah, I just felt like the odds were against me in my first attempt. And the next one, this was called Tharsis. Speaking of having the odds stacked against you, I really liked the premise of this game, how it was kind of about fixing crises on a space station or like a spacecraft. And you have to kind of roll dice to try and get high enough numbers to attain a certain total. And rolling certain other numbers could like do bad things for you. And there was a lot of like resource management and a lot of like, generally really cool gameplay mechanics in this one. But eventually it just felt like I had done everything right and still lost because I had bad dice rolls. And that's always going to be the danger in a game like this. And unfortunately it did turn out to be the case in this one. Looks like this was another one with rendering errors because it froze up on me again. So I'm probably going to have another like freeze up scare here. I don't know. I don't know why I had so many rendering errors with so many of the clips I gathered. It's pretty frustrating. I put a lot of time into gathering those clips. Oh no, did the whole stream freeze now? Oh no, it's back. Alright, so this one was called Mostly Intense Monster Defense. And it's very clearly just a Plants vs. Zombies clone. And it was, really fun for a while. You get like various types of monsters to act as your defenses, and different things can deal with different enemies in different ways. Um, After a while, it just got kind of frustrating because it was, again, a situation where I felt like I had done everything right and the game still made me lose. So it was something I thought had a lot of potential, but kind of squandered it in just being like needlessly way too difficult. Like, Plants vs. Zombies, the first one is admittedly like a pretty easy game, but it's still fun. It's got just enough challenge to where you feel like you need to put forth some effort. But this one, like, really pushes you to your limits a little too much, I think, and would be a lot more fun if it gave you a lot more leeway. My next one, this one was called Landlord of the Woods. And what I did really like about this one was the art style. It has very nice aesthetics that I appreciated big time. But I got stuck on a lot of the puzzles for a pretty long time. This one right here was a particularly bad one where you're just trying to like make all these different cube shapes fit perfectly into the outlines. So I don't know. A lot of the puzzles, it would be like, I can kind of see what they're going for, but man, like, does it really need to be this hard? And I think there were even some puzzles that I just straight up could not figure out, no matter how long I tried at them. So I don't know. This was one that I wanted to like a lot more, and just felt like too many of the puzzles were just too frustrating for me to really have a lot of fun with. All right, now my next one. This is a fairly famous game, but it was Hello Neighbor. I played this one for the full 45 minutes, and I don't think I made a single bit of progress. And I don't know. I talked a lot as I was streaming this game about like how they tried very hard to have a viral marketing campaign and like to merchandise the game and try to make this the next Five Nights at Freddy's. And I just did not see that kind of potential in it at all. Uh, you know, it's really just a stealth game, and the whole time I could not figure out what I was supposed to be doing or where I was supposed to be going. So it was just like more frustrating than anything. It wasn't really like scary at any point, just kind of like confusing and not all that exciting. But yeah, it's another game where like I feel like more generosity in the difficulty would have made it more fun because I would have gotten to see more of the game and feel like I'm actually getting somewhere. Because like I don't want to feel like every single thing is a struggle in a game. You want there to be some easy parts. And just in Hello Neighbor, I felt like I couldn't really get anything at all done. It was just kind of frustrating. And then my last one in the too hard for me category. This was called Ghost of a Tale. And on the surface, it looked really nice. It's a very surprisingly pretty game. You play as a little mouse guy and you're in a fantasy setting. It also has a lot of stealth elements. You have to sneak past a lot of like rat guards. Um, but yeah, this one again, it just got very frustrating trying to like navigate these narrow corridors and like remember where I'm supposed to be going and try not to get got by the rats that are chasing me down. So, I don't know. This one was like very pretty, And I really wanted it to be a fun game, but I just didn't really have a lot of fun playing that one at all. Thankfully, that one was a free giveaway, you know. And that is the last one in the too hard for me category. But I'm going to go into one final negative category, which is not a very long one, but moderate length, I guess. This one I just called the Unremarkables. Some of these will be games that I outright disliked. Some of them will be, games that I had a pretty good time with, but couldn't really think of anything worth honoring in them. And some of the games will be just like things where like I could recognize the quality but also recognize that they are totally like outside my genre. My first one in that category was called Witch's Tea Party. This one, I don't know how much I can say about it. It seems like it's made in RPG Maker or something like that. It has pretty okay artwork. It does have that pretty good element to it. But it was, a lot of just kind of wandering around empty rooms, just kind of like figuring out where I'm supposed to be going. The one thing that was actually remarkable in this game was I made a joke, like, partway through playing it of like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if like this cutesy, kid-friendly game turned out to have a horror twist like halfway through it. And then like it actually did have a horror jump scare, which I think I included in the clips that I captured here. Let me see if that comes up. Cuz like a lot of the game is about like you're trying to locate a specific other character, and I was joking around like, what if it turns out that this other character is fucking dead? And, well, you get to this little closet here, and this shit happens. So that was pretty incredible. I think it turned out that, they retconned it and said, like, oh, it was actually just red paint and there wasn't any actual blood. But her soul was removed from her body, but also she's not dead. So I don't know. I just felt like really vindicated for calling the horror twist and then seeing it happen. But that was the only like really remarkable thing that happened in the game. Right, another one was Wildcat Gun Machine. This one seems like it's very much going for like an Enter the Gungeon type of vibe, but I don't know. It's hard to explain why, but it never really like congealed into a fun overall experience. I didn't find the combat all that compelling or like a great variety in like weapons or pickups or anything like that. Just kind of like a pretty basic action game, which is like it's got fairly fun core mechanics, but just could have used a really like lot more to punch it up. Also, this boss fight that I had gotten into was way too tanky, which definitely made it drag on for way too long and made it a little less fun. Next up is Ultra Hat Dimension. And honestly, I feel like this one has a kind of similar vibe to Witch's Tea Party, but I would say I probably enjoyed this one a little more. It's just like a top-down puzzle game where like when you walk past these little ghost or blob characters, they would punch you in like the opposite direction. But you could bypass that if you're wearing the same hat that they are. It's just a very like basic puzzle game. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. It's just not the style of game that I enjoy playing for very long. It's something that I could recommend to people if I knew they like this type of game, but it's not really for me. Next one we had was Thea. This one, I don't know, I don't really remember a lot about it. I think it was sort of Civilization like, where you're kind of like managing a city. It's in a fantasy setting, but you also send expeditions out and they would get into combat encounters. And I don't think I ever got like a very firm grasp on how the combat worked, but I didn't have a whole lot of fun with that combat. This was another thing where I guess I got that feeling like the odds were stacked against me. I think the real problem was like when I went into my first fight, I had no I had no way of knowing if it was a fight that I stood a chance of winning, and as it turned out, it was a fight that I stood no chance of winning. But I really didn't have a way to know that before getting into it. Next one, this was called Syzygy. Um, Sort of like in the vein of Ultra Hat Dimension. It's another like bird's eye view puzzle game where you're just trying to like clear single rooms. It had a neat mechanic where you could change the layout of the floor tiles to be squares or triangles or hexagons. And depending on the layout, that could be more or less helpful in helping you like avoid hazards or navigate around obstacles or get away from enemies. So I could like see and appreciate how that's a cool idea, but it's just not something that I have a lot of fun with personally. I get what they were going for, you know, I see them. Another one was Space Routine, and this was something that I really wanted to be good. You know, it was in sort of a, I guess, Jetsons esque setting where you're just kind of like managing a family's daily routine, like between like two parents and a baby. And you're supposed to, you know, get the parents to drive to their office jobs and like drive the kid to school and manage things like everybody's hunger and fun and happiness and all that stuff. I just didn't really have a lot of fun with it though. I don't know. It's hard to explain why it never got into like a cohesive fun product for me. But I guess like the individual stats of all the characters seemed unreasonably hard to manage, and like it consumed a lot of time trying to manage all of those things, and there wasn't really a lot of breathing room to like just let it be fun, you know. It was like repetitive. I mean, it was a routine, but there it needed like elements to break up the routine. Otherwise, you just have, you know, a very boring overall experience. Then there was a Sky Rogue, and this one I debated putting in the really deserves some kind of award category, but I don't know. This is I mean, like games in that category I feel like I would revisit or play again, but I don't really feel like I would play this one again. It's like it feels pretty good to play. I mean, it's got pretty good controls. It's fun flying around in the little jet and like shooting at buildings and targets and stuff. The thing that's not fun about it though is the combat, where like when you're in these dogfights with other aircraft, it doesn't feel like you have a lot of control in either damaging the enemies or avoiding damage from the enemies. The big thing was avoiding damage from the enemies. Because it would tell you, like, oh, if you see that enemies have locked onto you with their missiles, you need to do a barrel roll to avoid it. And sometimes I would do that and still get hit anyway. So, for one thing, it's like not fun to not be able to tell where attacks are coming from, but it's also not fun when the game gives you a very inconsistent way to avoid that damage. Next one I've got is Railway Empire. And this is very much one of those where, like, I cannot reasonably call this a bad game. It's just a type of genre that doesn't usually vibe with me. I can see on paper how I might like a train simulator like this, where it's all about building rail lines and connecting cities and managing resources. I like the idea of it, but I don't know, I just feel like I would need to dedicate a lot of my time to something like this in order to learn how to properly play it and to start thriving at it. My next one was called, oh god. Okay, I think sometimes the video size is like really varying because I rendered a lot of these in 1080p and then partway through decided to render them in 480p because I really don't need that much video quality. This one is called Press Any Button. Um, and this one started out really interesting. It started out like you were interacting with this AI that's kind of like trying to figure out the idea of what a game is. And so it had you like, obviously it does have that gimmick of you press any button and that's your one way to interact with the game. And it starts out having you do a bunch of different tasks and have a lot of variety. And eventually it just turns into this, which is objects fall down and you have to put platforms under them, but you can only place so many platforms at a time. Um, I was hoping it would have kept going with more variety than this, because this was like, not that fun. I wish that this was not the final mechanic that it landed on. And I wish that it would have kept like introducing more twists into the game. So I don't know. It could have been more fun if it had just given me more variety, but since it didn't, eh, just wasn't all that into it. Oh yeah, my next one is Odd Realm. Um, I cannot say too much about this game except it really wants to be Dwarf Fortress, and it's really just a less complex Dwarf Fortress. And there's not really a whole lot of reason to play that in a world where Dwarf Fortress exists and is free. So that's about all there is to that one. I don't think I even played it for the full length of time because, like, nothing really interesting was happening. So I was just like, yeah, let's go on to something else. This one was called Nubaron. And I played a game very similar to this one. I think it was called like Chronology or something like that in like the previous batch of Game Roulette games. And I really wish both of them had been in the same batch because then I would have made a whole dedicated category that was just side-scrolling puzzle platformers where you play as a gnome character. Because that's what both Nubaron and Chronology were. And it's a wild coincidence that I've now played two of those games on Game Roulette. And I called this one unremarkable just because it's like, it really didn't do anything that memorable. It was kind of a regular puzzle platformer. I think I actually ended up stopping playing this one because I got soft locked at one point. Like, I think there was a glitch in one of the puzzles I was trying to solve that caused me to be, like, unable to move anywhere else. I'm gonna see if it gets to that point. It's probably near the end of the clip, if it did happen. Hmm. I don't know. Maybe I was thinking of a different game. No, I think, this might have been it. Like, I think a switch that I flipped was supposed to unlock a door and, like, did not unlock that door or something like that. Yeah, I got soft locked in it, and I think I probably just stopped at that point because I wasn't having that much fun up to that point. So let me just move on here. My next unremarkable was called Julia Among the Stars. And I didn't get very into this one. It was, I don't know, another sort of point and click adventure game where you're just going from screen to screen, trying to find the next piece of information and like unlock the next door to let you go to the next screen. You had to like read a lot of email logs, which I always hate in a video game. I hate when like I'm playing a character and I walk up to a computer and I have to read other people's boring work related emails just to get like a door code or something. There's like nothing better to make me lose interest in a game than being like, okay, stop playing and read this now. Okay, so my next one, it was Fantasy General 2. I think I like mentally confused this one with Thea a lot because they are both like fantasy themed strategy games. Oh, that one disappeared from the screen. Oh, my hard drive disconnected again. Why does that keep happening? That's pretty troubling. Honestly, I've always kind of had that problem with this specific external hard drive. Sometimes it just loses connection for like 1 second and then brings it back. So yeah, Fantasy General 2. This also had like sort of Civilization-esque combat to it. And I don't know. I didn't feel all that compelled by it. I mean, part of it is that it's a game that doesn't lend itself well to the game Roulette because I have to spend like all of my 45 minutes just doing tutorial stuff and then maybe not even reaching the end of the tutorial. It's just kind of a downfall of that genre that it doesn't gel well with my stream format. It's nothing about the game being bad, just like not working well in that context. Now, another one with a generic fantasy title. This was Feyria, and it was another like deck builder, another like one-on-one card battler game. This one had the sort of unique gimmick that you place down tiles of terrain and have to like place your units on those tiles to attack your enemies. I would probably be a lot more into this game, but I think it was trying to be like another Hearthstone, where it's highly encouraged that you play online and you buy booster packs to get more cards and stuff like that. And I just cannot possibly get myself into something that's exploitative like that. Which is a shame because I really do like the core gameplay of a game like this. I just hate that it always has like some shitty mode of monetization attached to it. All right, then next up, we got Evil Genius. And I would probably disappoint a lot of people by saying that I didn't really enjoy Evil Genius all that much. But again, this is a product of, just the nature of game roulettes, where it's really hard to get into a game that really requires you to play through a whole tutorial when you know you've got a like 45-minute time limit looming over you. It is a shame, because I've heard that Evil Genius is a stone cold classic. A lot of people really adore it. I even like was aware of it when it was first coming out and really wanted to play it, but just never had the money, saved it for other PC games. But it was one of those that I always wanted to get around to one day. My next one is Everspace. Okay, I saw this title and had absolutely no memory of what the game was, so it's a good thing I collected these video clips. Everspace, I don't know, I liked the idea of it pretty well. How it's just kind of about like going through space, collecting resources. The combat in it was pretty good, but I don't know. It didn't click a whole lot with me. I thought it was like fairly good, but didn't contain anything that really made me go, wow, what an amazing game. Hmm. I was trying to think, I played some space sim game that might have been in the last batch of games where it required you to dock at space stations and it was very picky with the controls. For a minute, I thought that was this game, but it must have been something else. I get a lot of like space sim games like this mixed up with each other. So, I hardly even remember playing this game. It, I don't know, it had some pretty cool elements to it, had pretty good action, but just didn't hook me. Plus, very generic title. My next one here is called Dungeons 3. This one was very much a Dungeon Keeper clone. They very much wanted to be Dungeon Keeper. This one, though, had the most absolutely unbearable humor that I think I've ever encountered in a game roulette game. I should make a category just called worst ever sense of humor and give it to this game until something else dethrones it. I mean, like, look at this. You're in this beginning part where you're attacking enemies, your damage numbers would always be either 1337 or 9001. 'Cause those are hilarious, funny meme numbers. And that was kind of the tier of humor that you were forced to deal with all throughout playing this game. It made me want to die. And it is kind of a shame because like the gameplay itself was not terrible, but I cannot be made to play a not quite terrible game if I'm forced to endure like the most unbearable sense of humor I've ever seen in my life. This one was called like Dare Evil or Dare Evil or Deer Evil. I'm not sure how you're supposed to pronounce it. It's Dere Evil. And honestly, like when I was gathering the clips for this game, I barely even remembered playing it. I remembered there being this sort of like spooky creepy pasta like AI within the game or something like that. It's very much trying to be like a spooky spaghetti game crossed with a pretty generic platformer. So, yeah, like I said, I barely even remember playing this. So I guess in my 45 minutes of playing, all that I ever got was like a pretty okay platformer that just totally did not make an impression on me. So my next one was called Crossnick Plus. I feel like it's going to be really hard to even talk about this game. It's a block puzzle game. It's not like a match 3 game, but rather a change one entire row or one entire column to a single color. Um, was pretty frustrating to play, if I'm honest. No, it wasn't. It wasn't like one row or one column. It was one row and one column. Had to form a complete cross, and that was like just I don't know. It wasn't like extremely difficult to do, but just like very time consuming, and so it didn't really like make for a very fun time for me. I don't know. I did notice at the end that it had like all kinds of like head to head mode characters that you could choose from, and they all have different specialties. But the main game itself was just like very boring for me. Yeah, these were like all those cool characters, but they only existed in the versus mode for a puzzle game that I did not find all that entertaining in the first place. Next up was Cats Are Liquid, and compared to Crossnick Plus, I feel kind of bad putting Cats Are Liquid in this category, because this one was alright. It's like a, puzzle platformer with some level of physics to it, and you just play as this cat that can shift between solid and liquid modes and get like various other powers. Like I think at some point you can turn into a mist form. But I just didn't have a whole lot of fun with it. I felt like it has like the makings of a really interesting game, and it could be really fun, but just I don't know, something about like the very basic geometry and all the level design just made it like not that compelling to like go forward and see the next level. There wasn't like any sense of anticipation. Like I just knew going into the next level that I was going to hit like, all right, here's another set of puzzles. So yeah, thought it was, all right, but just never hit the point of being great to me. And next up, I've got Booth. There were like some likable elements to this game. It's very much going for the Papers, Please type of game where you're doing a routine task in a very isolated environment. I did kind of like the world building of it, honestly. And the interface was pretty cool, but it's hard to feel enthusiastic about a game where you know going into it that you are going to be made to do a very boring, repetitive task time after time. I get that it's like thematic to the game, but it's hard to get excited for something like that. And so this was kind of like the main gameplay loop of the game right here was like objects would go past a conveyor belt in front of you and you had to inspect them and get rid of the things that didn't pass inspection, and you get like a small salary and never quite have enough money to buy all the things you want. It's just kind of like, there's enough of this shit in real life. Do I really want to play a game that's even more dystopian than the real world? Where you're just, being crushed under an even bigger dystopia than the real world already is. Speaking of dystopian games, we next go on to Beholder, which, I don't know, it had an okay premise. You're basically playing as a landlord in a dystopian setting, and it's your job to spy on your neighbors and like snitch on them to the government if they're doing anything wrong. But it also like didn't play out in ways that I expected it to work. Like at one point, I was basically being asked to find a reason to get a specific neighbor arrested, and there was a random event that said like, oh, apples are now illegal to own. And I happened to have an apple, so I thought, oh, great, so I can complete my objective here by just, like, planting an apple in this guy's house, and then he'll get arrested. but like somehow that didn't work. So like the game actually wanted me to complete the objective in a different way. So that was a pretty disappointing experience where I thought I was being really clever, and it turned out that I just wasn't doing what the game wanted me to. That kind of thing will always be a disappointment. Like when you think you've come up with a creative solution to a puzzle, and then actually the game just wants you to do like specifically what it's telling you. Alright, just a few more here now. This one is Beglitched. And this one, I believe, actually was a match 3 game. But yeah, this other element of it, outside of the match 3 mechanics, was a little hard for me to grasp. I didn't really know what I was supposed to be doing. Because, like, these little screens would tell you, I think, not what they actually contained, but what the adjacent squares contained. So kind of like a Minesweeper element, I guess. But it took me a really long time to grasp that. And so overall, what it turned out to be for me was just like a none too remarkable match 3 game. And that's about all I've got to say about that. So my next one was Alien Isolation. Now this one I know actually had like a pretty good amount of positive buzz when it came out. People seem to really like this one, particularly big fans of Alien. Obviously, I really love the first 2 Alien movies. I didn't see 3 or 4, and all of the ones after that have been kind of a mixed bag, in my opinion. And I don't know, this one, I kind of called it before I went into the game, but I had a feeling it would involve doing just a lot of routine and boring tasks, and I wouldn't even get to anything spooky in the course of the game. And I was pretty much right about that. The first 45 minutes were not all that spooky. I definitely did not even see an alien, just kind of walked around an empty space station. But, you know, that was kind of to be expected. Now, my last one, this was called A2B. That's A, the number 2, BE, all one word. A science fiction narrative. And this is like, this is probably the only game on the list that I will straight up say was bad. Like, not even just that I didn't enjoy what the game was going for. Like, it's not even that I didn't enjoy the science fiction narrative, just that the game was badly made in a lot of ways. Like, some of the character sprites were just broken. Some of them had, like, floating pixels in what was supposed to be the corner of the sprite. A lot of stuff like that that would really take you out of it. And I think I stopped playing this one after, like, probably no more than 20 minutes. I was just not enjoying it at all. So, yeah, that is the last of the unremarkables. That one basically is remarkable in how bad it was, though. Really did not like this one at all. And that is the note that I'm ending things on here. So anyway, those are all of the games that I have played in the last 6 months of game roulettes. Well, all of the PC games, because I've started doing retro game roulettes recently, but I've decided they would not be part of the Game Roulette Awards shows, because a big part of the Game Roulette Awards is like the consumer advice element. It's me kind of telling you which games to buy and which games not to buy. So it seems kind of pointless to do that for retro games that, you know, came out 20 years ago. People don't really need to know whether they should or should not buy those. So, anyway, that's going to do it for tonight. This is going to conclude the 4th Game Roulette Awards show. I'm just kind of cleaning up my OBS interface right now. So let's hear it for all the games, good and bad, that we went over tonight. I'm glad there was at least one person viewing the awards show this time. I feel like I'm gonna lose my voice after talking for like 3 straight hours. But anyway, hope you enjoyed watching the awards show here. And tune in again in maybe another 6 months or so, when I plan to do an award show for the next batch of Game Roulettes. Although, what I might do instead of like a specific time period is just try to accumulate like a specific number of games played, and then do awards based on that. So, you know, I did a full year of weekly Game Roulettes, but in the last few weeks I've been branching out and doing different games. But hopefully next week you can catch another Game Roulette from me. And yeah, we will be well on our way to the next awards show. So I hope you will also tune in for that. Hope anybody who was here had fun. Or, you know, if anybody's watching the archive of this in the future, hope you enjoyed. Hope you found some games that you'll want to buy, or think about buying. You know, a lot of good stuff like that. But anyway, maybe I will see you next time that I do a Game Roulette. Until then, have a good week, and remember to stay hydrated.